If you had told me a year ago that I'd be planning my dream wedding, I would have laughed and told you to get your head checked. I wasn't the girl who doodled wedding dresses in her notebooks or pinned flower arrangements to a secret Pinterest board. I liked my life how it was. Messy, unpredictable, mine. But then I met Matthew. Matthew was different. He was charming without being slimy, attentive without being overbearing. He remembered tiny details about me. How I liked my tea, the way I tapped my fingers when I was anxious, the fact that I loved thunderstorms more than sunshine. It felt easy with him. Natural, like I'd finally found the person who fit into all my weird, jagged edges without trying to smooth them out. Our relationship moved fast, but it never felt rushed. Within 8 months, we were engaged. The ring wasn't extravagant. It was simple, understated, exactly right. And when he got down on one knee under the oak tree in my mom's garden, I said yes before he even finished asking. Looking back, maybe that was the first sign how quickly I leapt, how desperate I was to believe in the fairy tale. Chloe was, of course, the first person I called, my best friend since we were 12. We'd been through everything together. Bad haircuts, worse boyfriends, the time she broke her leg trying to impress a guy by skateboarding downhill. She cried when I told her I was engaged, told me she loved Matthew like a brother already. I asked her to be my maid of honor, and she hugged me so tightly, I thought my ribs might crack. Planning the wedding was a whirlwind. Every weekend was booked with appointments, cake tastings, venue tours, dress, fittings. Chloe was by my side for all of it, squealing over lace patterns and flower arrangements. Matthew was involved too, at least at first. He'd sit through the meetings, nodding along, squeezing my hand under the table. We were building something, together, something big and beautiful and lasting. I remember thinking, during one of our planning sessions, that this was the happiest I had ever been. It was like life had finally clicked into place, like the years of heartbreak and disappointment had all been leading up to this. I wasn't just marrying Matthew. I was starting a life, a family, a future. I let myself believe in it completely. Of course, hindsight is a brutal thing. If I'd paid closer attention, maybe I would have noticed the little things sooner. The way Chloe and Matthew would sometimes share a look that lasted a second too long. The sudden, unexplained nights when Matthew was working late. The vague answers Chloe gave when I asked what she'd been up to. But in that moment, surrounded by color palettes and RSVP cards, I was blind. Blissfully, stupidly blind. And they were counting on that. The first real crack showed up at my hen do. It was supposed to be a night to remember. Chloe planned it all, of course. She booked us a gorgeous rooftop bar, made sure everyone wore glittery sashes and embarrassing tiaras, even ordered a 3-tiered cake shaped like a bottle of Prosecco. She was in her element, bouncing from guest to guest, laughing too loudly, downing cocktails like water. At first, I was too swept up in the excitement to notice anything. But somewhere between the third and fourth drink, I spotted her phone light up on the table. Matthew's name. A lot of messages. I frowned, but brushed it off. He was probably just checking in, making sure I wasn't getting into too much trouble. He could be a little overprotective sometimes. Cute, I told myself. Sweet. Nothing more. Later that night, after everyone else had either passed out or staggered into cabs, Chloe and I sat on the curb, our shoes abandoned, our makeup smudged. She leaned her head on my shoulder and slurred, "You're too good for him, you know?" I laughed, assuming it was the alcohol talking. "Don't be daft, he's perfect." She pulled back to look at me, her eyes glassy. "No one's perfect, Nat." There was something in her voice, a rawness I couldn't quite place. I wanted to press her, to ask what she meant, but she immediately changed the subject, launching into a story about some guy who'd hit on her at the bar. Still, the comment gnawed at me, little teeth sinking in, refusing to let go. The weeks that followed were a blur of final fittings, last-minute emergencies, and family dramas. My mom cried over the seating chart. Matthew's dad made passive-aggressive comments about the food choices. Chloe started missing meetings, always with some flimsy excuse. Migraine, work emergency, car trouble. When she did show up, she seemed distracted, jittery. Her phone was always clutched tightly in her hand, her laugh a little too forced. I told myself she was just stressed. After all, planning a wedding wasn't exactly a walk in the park, especially when you were also juggling your own life and job. Still, the feeling grew, a quiet, persistent unease that curled in my stomach like smoke. One afternoon, about a week before the wedding, I popped by Matthew's flat unexpectedly. We'd agreed to meet at the venue later that evening, but I'd finished work early and thought it would be a nice surprise. I had keys to his place by then. He said it made sense, seeing as we were about to live together. When I stepped inside, the flat was empty. At least, it seemed empty, but the living room smelled faintly of Chloe's perfume. Something floral and sweet, a smell I knew almost as well as my own skin. I found a half-empty wine glass on the coffee table, lipstick on the rim, and on the armrest of the sofa, tucked carelessly underneath a cushion, was a pearl hair clip. Chloe's. I recognized it immediately. It was the one I'd given her for her birthday last year. My chest tightened. I stood, there for what felt like an hour, just staring at the clip, my mind spiraling. There were logical explanations, surely. Maybe she'd dropped by to talk about wedding stuff. Maybe they'd had a quick drink. Nothing more. Maybe. But the truth was already there, staring me in the face. I just wasn't ready to look it full in the eye. I didn't say anything that night. I went through the motions, met Matthew at the venue, smiled through the final walkthrough with the wedding planner, nodded along as he joked about the bar tab being bigger than the flower bill. All the while, my mind buzzed like a hornet's nest, every word he said sharpening the sting. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake the truth out of him. But something inside me held back. Instead, I smiled, kissed him goodnight, and went home to my flat. I sat on my bed, still in my dress, staring at the wall. My heart felt like it was beating outside my body, thrumming against my ribs in angry, desperate waves. That's when the idea first planted itself. If he was lying to me, if they were lying to me, then they deserved to be exposed. Not just in some quiet, private argument that could be brushed under the rug. No, they deserved a stage, an audience, a spotlight. It was almost laughable how perfect the timing was. A wedding, the ultimate public declaration of love. Friends and family gathered, all eyes on us. A microphone in my hand, a giant screen ready for the slideshow of baby photos and cringy teenage moments. I could hijack it, turn it into my moment, my truth. The thought was intoxicating. It was the first time in days I felt powerful instead of pathetic. But first, I needed proof. Real proof. Something no one could deny, no matter how many tears Chloe might fake or how many lies Matthew might spin. I started small, checking his phone whenever I could, glancing at his emails when he left his laptop open. Harmless, I told myself. Necessary. And God, it didn't take long. The messages were all there, hidden in a folder innocently labeled wedding planning. Dozens of them. Some short and sickeningly sweet. Some not so sweet. I scrolled through them in a daze, the words blurring together. Wish you were here instead of her. You're the only thing getting me through this sham. One more week, and we'll figure it out. One more week. They were going to let me walk down the aisle, pledge my life to a lie, and then what? Leave me to pick up the pieces while they rode off into the sunset together? No, not a chance. I saved everything, screenshotted the messages, emailed them to myself under a disguised subject line, backed them up in the cloud. If either of them suspected anything and tried to cover their tracks, it would already be too late. Then I found something even better. A video. Grainy, poorly lit, but unmistakable. Matthew's flat. Chloe laughing as she pulled him toward me. The camera, her dress hitched scandalously high, his hands all over her. They were both drunk, both giddy, both completely, stupidly in love. I watched it once, stomach twisting, then again with a cold detachment settling over me. This wasn't just betrayal, this was humiliation. And they'd handed me the weapon, to destroy them on a silver platter. All I had to do now was wait. The days leading up to the wedding felt surreal, like walking through a dream I couldn't wake up from. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Matthew was more attentive than ever, checking in constantly, sending little gifts to my flat, calling me his forever. Chloe, too, played her role to perfection, giggling beside me at the final bridesmaids brunch, fussing over my dress fittings, pretending to be the friend I had trusted since we were 15. I watched them both like a scientist studying lab rats, noting every false smile, every guilty glance they thought they hid so well. If I hadn't known better, they might have fooled me. They had certainly fooled everyone else. My mother was beside herself with excitement, crying at every wedding-related event as if she were starring in her own rom-com. My friends buzzed with talk of dresses, hairdos, last-minute diet tips. No one saw it. No one saw the cracked spiderwebbing under the surface. And I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. There was a strange power in the silence, knowing what I knew, knowing what was coming, walking among them with this secret tucked into my chest like a ticking bomb. Every time Matthew kissed me, every time Chloe squeezed my hand and said how happy she was for me, I smiled back sweetly, thinking, soon, very soon. I spent my nights perfecting the plan, timing everything down to the second. I didn't want a messy confrontation or a screaming match in the middle of the ceremony. I wanted precision. I wanted theater. First, I replaced the video meant for the slideshow with my own little production. It wasn't hard. Matthew had given me full access to the wedding planner's Google Drive. Trusting, stupid Matthew. I titled it something innocuous. Final draft, memories.mp4. It blended right in. I also made sure there was a backup copy on a USB tucked safely into my clutch. If the venue's Wi-Fi failed or someone tried to pull the plug, I'd be ready. Next came the vows. We had decided to write our own, another one of Matthew's romantic ideas. He said he wanted it to feel personal, raw. Well, it was about to get very personal, very raw. Instead of the promises of love and loyalty he expected, I wrote a speech. Short, sharp, devastating. A setup for the video that would follow. No one would see it coming. Finally, I rehearsed my expressions in the mirror. Neutral, not bitter. Sad, not furious. If I played this right, if I struck the right note of hurt rather than anger, there would be no turning public sympathy back in their direction. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about showing every girl who's ever been lied to that sometimes you get to write your own ending, and it doesn't have to be a quiet, broken one. It can be loud. It can be blazing. It can be unforgettable. And God help them both. It would be. The night before the wedding was supposed to be one of those magical, nerve-wracked evenings where you can't sleep because you're too excited. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the hotel suite, feeling like a soldier the night before a battle. Chloe stayed in the room next to mine, along with the other bridesmaids. She had knocked on my door earlier, giggling with a bottle of Prosecco tucked under her arm, suggesting a mini hen night part 2. I told her I was exhausted, and in a way, it wasn't a lie. I was exhausted from pretending, from smiling, from keeping the volcano inside me from erupting too soon. Instead, I sat at the little desk by the window, laptop open, headphones in, watching the confession video one last time. Making sure it was sharp, clear, irrefutable. It wasn't just grainy screenshots or vague accusations. It was full color, high definition, soul-crushing proof. Messages between them, photos, a video clip Chloe had stupidly taken herself, laughing, calling him my future husband, on a night when she thought I was out of town. I had pieced it together like a twisted little film, scored with gentle piano music at first, something sweet, something deceptively innocent, before the gut punch of the reveal. It ended on a simple black screen, white letters fading in. Some promises aren't made to be kept. I smiled grimly. It was perfect. Better than anything I could have screamed in a fit of rage. Cold, clinical, undeniable. The clock on my phone blinked 2:17 a.m. I closed the laptop and sat back, feeling the tension coil tighter in my chest. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, I would stand up in front of everyone, our families, our friends, everyone who thought they knew us, and show them the truth. Not because I wanted to humiliate myself, not because I needed them to hate Matthew and Chloe as much as I did, but because I needed to stop carrying the weight of their betrayal in silence. I thought about canceling the wedding quietly, calling it off, telling people it just wasn't right, walking away without a scene. It would have been easier, cleaner, but I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if they got away with it, if they told people I'd gone mad, if they painted me as the villain in a story where I wasn't even the one who broke the rules. No, they didn't deserve my silence. Tomorrow wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth. It was about letting go. I crawled into bed, staring at the dress hanging in the corner of the room, the beautiful white gown I had once thought I'd be married in. Tomorrow, I would wear it anyway. Not as a beginning, but as an ending. I closed my eyes and finally drifted into sleep. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the curtains, soft and golden, painting everything in this unreal, dreamlike glow. For a moment, just a split second, I forgot what day it was. I just felt warm, calm, almost excited. Then it all came crashing back. The wedding, the betrayal, the plan. I sat up, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I pressed my palms flat against the mattress, grounding myself. This was it. The morning I had once fantasized about for years had arrived, and it looked nothing like the picture I had painted in my head. There was a knock at the door before I could even brush my teeth. My mom bustling in with a tray of coffee, croissants, and that tired but excited smile she always wore when she was trying too hard to keep everything perfect. "Morning, darling," she chirped, setting the tray down. "How are you feeling? Ready for your big day?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, big day." She fussed around, smoothing the bed covers, opening the windows. I just sat there sipping coffee that tasted like ash in my mouth, trying to ignore the way her eyes glistened a little too brightly. She was so proud, so happy, and in a few hours, that happiness was going to shatter. I hated that part. Hurting her wasn't part of the plan, but there was no way around it. The next few hours blurred into a manic montage, hair and makeup artists sweeping in, pinning, curling, painting, bridesmaids fluttering about in silky robes, snapping selfies, squealing over every little thing, bottles popping, glasses clinking, a constant hum of excitement. Chloe breezed in like a storm in designer heels, grinning from ear to ear, hugging me so tight it almost knocked the air out of my lungs. "You look stunning already," she gushed. "Today's going to be perfect. I can feel it." I smiled and hugged her back. I even whispered thank you. My hands shook a little, but I told myself it was nerves, normal bridal nerves. Nothing suspicious. The photographer arrived, snapping candid shots, staging little scenes of laughter and lipstick touch-ups. I played my part, smiled at all the right moments, tilted my head just so. Looking back, it must have been the best acting performance of my life. The dress was next. When I stepped into it, I half expected to feel something, some surge of joy or nerves or even regret, but all I felt was hollow, like I was slipping into a costume for a role I didn't want anymore. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, radiant, glowing, a vision in white. A liar. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 o'clock, just a short drive to the gardens where everything was set up. I glanced at the clock. 4:47 a.m. Hours left before everything changed, before the smiles cracked, before the truth spilled into the open like red wine on a white dress. My stomach twisted. Set the champagne flute down, untouched. I couldn't eat, couldn't drink. I barely even breathed. I just kept moving through the motions, step by step like a train on a track it couldn't jump. Everyone thought today was about forever. For me, it was about finally setting myself free. By the time the clock ticked, closer to 2 o'clock, I had fully entered that zone. You know the one, where everything seems like it's happening in slow motion, but you know there's no turning back. Like the world is holding its breath along with you, just waiting for the moment to explode. I was standing in front of the mirror again, this time adjusting my veil, but I wasn't really looking at my reflection. I was looking beyond it. What if they didn't show up? What if he figured it out? What if he refused to come? What if my world came crashing down and no one was there to catch me? The knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. I turned around just as Chloe barged in, dressed in her gown, her smile as wide as ever. "You okay?" she asked, her tone so light, so utterly unaware. "We're almost ready to go." I nodded, forcing another smile. "Yeah, just a little nervous." "You'll be perfect," she reassured me. "Everyone's gonna love it." The words were so comforting, but I could hear the cracks forming in my mind, my heart, in everything. There was no perfect in this, no perfect ending. Not anymore. She fussed over me, adjusting my hair, smoothing the fabric of the dress like she was a fairy godmother in a Disney movie. I didn't correct her, didn't tell her that everything was already falling apart. Instead, I just let her work, pretending for just a little longer that this was all real. After a few more minutes of light chatter, a car pulled up in front of the venue. Guests began filtering in. The ceremony was moments away. I kept my eyes on the door, waiting for them. I needed them to arrive. If they didn't, I was standing here for nothing. It felt like an eternity. But then, I saw them. The other woman. Hannah. She walked in like she owned the place. Her smile was radiant, her makeup pristine, her laughter echoing down the hall as she greeted the guests. She was everything I was supposed to be, except honest, except loyal. I tried not to focus on her, on them. But it was impossible. It was everywhere I turned. She looked like she belonged there. He was standing beside her, smiling, talking to my father. He looked normal, like he hadn't just broken my heart 1,000 times over, like everything was fine, like nothing was wrong. My hands shook, but I clenched them into fists at my sides. This was the moment. I breathed in, steadying myself. The wedding coordinator popped her head in, her face a blur of urgency and excitement. "The guests are all seated. It's time to line up for the ceremony." I nodded. "I'll be right there." When I turned back to the mirror, I didn't see the bride anymore. I saw the woman who had been betrayed, the woman who had chosen this moment to expose the truth. There was no turning back. I grabbed the folder in my hands, the one with the video, the one that would change everything. My breath hitched, but I didn't care. It was time. "Ready?" Chloe asked, her voice brimming with excitement. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm ready." The doors opened and I stepped into the room. I could hear the murmur of the crowd, the faint rustle of fabrics, the shuffle of feet, against the floor. It all felt so distant, as though I wasn't really there, like I was watching it from somewhere far away, somewhere safer, somewhere I couldn't feel the weight of every single eye on me. I felt Chloe's hand on my arm. She was beside me, ready to walk me down the aisle, but her grip was tense, unsure. Maybe she had noticed the change in my posture. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. It didn't matter. We walked slowly, deliberately, towards the front. The white roses on either side of the aisle seemed almost too perfect for what was about to unfold, too pristine for what was about to be shattered. When we reached the altar, I saw him. Daniel. He looked so handsome, so composed, standing there in his tuxedo. His smile was wide and confident, eyes bright. The man who had built everything I ever wanted in this life, until the lies started to creep in. His smile faltered the moment his eyes met mine. He must have seen the shift in my posture. Maybe he even saw the emptiness behind my gaze. I stood there, the cold air of the room brushing against my skin. Every single heartbeat felt too loud, every single second too long. I glanced at Hannah. She was standing a little further down the aisle, her eyes glued to Daniel, as if she couldn't bear to look at anyone else. She had no idea what was coming, and that was the worst part. She didn't even know she was just as much a part of the lie as he was. The officiant smiled at me, his hands folded neatly in front of him. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice a quiet whisper. No, I wasn't. I was never going to be ready, but I had no choice now. I nodded. It wasn't until this moment, this very moment, that I realized what I was really doing. I wasn't just calling him out. I wasn't just exposing Hannah. No, I was taking back control. I was reclaiming the power that they had stolen from me all these years. For all the moments they had taken away from me, I would take this one from them. I would make sure they would never forget this. And no matter how hard they tried, they could never erase what was about to happen. The officiant turned to Daniel first. "Do you, Daniel, take this woman, your bride, to be your lawfully wedded wife?" He grinned, stepping forward, the answer already on the tip of his tongue. But before he could speak, I did it. I gave the signal to the technician in the back, and the screen behind us flickered to life. The guests didn't understand what was happening at first. Some gasped, some laughed awkwardly. But it wasn't the video of us together, the one where we stood smiling, full of hope for the future. No, it was a different video, one that had been recorded only hours ago. It started with him sitting in a hotel room, just the way I remembered him. The sound of a TV in the background, the faint hum of the air conditioning. But what I didn't expect was for Hannah to step into frame, her face flushed. They were talking, laughing, but as the camera focused on them, the words spilled out. "You said you'd tell her soon," she said, her voice too soft, too sweet, like she was trying to play the role of the innocent. And then he spoke. "Soon, babe, soon, but she's too happy to know. I can't ruin it yet." The room went silent as the video continued, showing the exchange between them. It didn't matter that I had hoped to hear the truth from his lips. It didn't matter that this was all happening in front of an audience, because now they all knew. I watched as Daniel's face drained of color. I heard the collective gasps and murmurs. He turned to look at me, his eyes wide with panic. But there was no escape. Now, there was no pretending this wasn't happening. The truth was out, and it was his turn to face the consequences. I couldn't look at him. Not yet. Not until I knew everyone had seen what I needed them to see. The people I had once trusted, the people who had watched my life unfold, now watching him crumble before me. I needed them to witness this. The silence in the room was deafening. It was as if time had stopped entirely. Everyone frozen in place, too afraid to speak, too uncertain of how to respond. Some of the guests were whispering amongst themselves, trying to make sense of what they'd just seen. Others were frozen, eyes wide, staring in disbelief. I turned to the screen and let the video continue. It felt like a slow unraveling, each second pulling apart the world I thought I had built. There was no coming back from this. The video showed them together, laughing, holding hands, the casual intimacy they shared. And then the camera moved in closer, capturing something even more damning. Her lips against his cheek, his hand sliding too far down her back. It was all there, exposed for everyone to see. The lies they had spun, the time they had stolen from me, all laid bare. "I thought you loved me," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if it was meant for him or if it was just a thought that had slipped out. I barely recognized the voice that came from my mouth. It was as though I wasn't even speaking anymore. This wasn't me. This was someone else. Someone who had already said goodbye to the man who had once meant everything to her. Daniel's breath hitched. His eyes were frantic, scanning the crowd, looking for some sign of mercy, some way to escape this humiliation. But there was no mercy, no escape. I can explain," he stammered, his voice breaking under the weight of his guilt. "This isn't what it looks like." "Isn't what it looks like?" I echoed, my voice steady now. "How much more obvious can you make it?" I was no longer angry, at least not in the way I had imagined. The anger that had been bubbling inside me for months, years, had transformed into something else, something cold and unfeeling. This wasn't a moment for rage. This was a moment for closure. I glanced around the room, and my gaze swept over the faces of the guests, our friends, our family. There was Chloe, her mouth slightly open, her hand pressed to her chest as if she were trying to hold in a scream. And then there was my mother, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, not out of sympathy for me, but out of something darker. She didn't approve. I could tell by the way she looked at me, but then I saw her lips tighten, just a little, and for the first time in ages, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Validation. I was doing the right thing. When I looked at Daniel again, his face was pale, eyes wide with terror, and his mouth moving, but no sound coming out. He had no words left. He had no explanation that could make this okay. The perfect career he had worked so tirelessly to build had always been a facade, and now it was collapsing around him. The officiant cleared his throat, his hand trembling, as he adjusted the microphone. Well, I suppose we've all seen enough of this. Let's just take a moment to process. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I turned to the crowd, standing tall, holding my gaze steady. I guess I could just walk away. I could leave him here to face the mess he made, but I'm not going to do that. The tension in the room thickened. It felt like the air had been sucked out, leaving nothing but a heavy, oppressive silence. I could feel my pulse racing, but I didn't let it show. I wouldn't let him see how this was affecting me. I would hold my ground. I'm going to give him one last gift, I said, my voice firm and unwavering, a reminder of everything he threw away in pursuit of the perfect life. I turned to the videographer, signaling him to begin. The lights dimmed, and a new image flashed up on the screen. It was a picture of me, a picture of the woman I used to be, before him, before any of this mess. I was happy, carefree, the woman I had almost forgotten, the woman I could still be. And as the image flashed on the screen, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It was the last breath before everything changed. The picture of me, so young and free, lingered on the screen for a moment longer, like an echo of a life I used to know. Then the lights flickered back to full brightness, and I looked at Daniel one last time, watching the color drain from his face. I thought I'd give you a little bit of insight into what you're really losing, I said, each word sharp, deliberate. I could feel the weight of my actions, the finality of it all, but I didn't flinch. You never bothered to know the person standing right in front of you. You were too busy chasing something that didn't even exist. The room was still silent, too silent. People were afraid to breathe. But they were watching me, every single one of them. I had their full attention now, and I wasn't going to waste it. I took a deep breath and walked toward the center of the room. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me, but I didn't look at them. I kept my gaze firmly on Daniel and Chloe. So, let me make this crystal clear. This wedding is over. It was never going to happen. And now you two can go on and build your perfect life together. Only now, it won't be with me. Chloe shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Daniel as if expecting him to fix it. But he wasn't fixing anything anymore. The cracks had already spread too far, and all the pieces were broken. Don't look at me like I'm the villain here, I added, my voice rising. You're the one who took a vow of loyalty, not me. You're the one who swore to love and cherish and then threw it all away for... What? For a few stolen moments of thrill? That's what you both built your perfect life on? I could see the guilt on Daniel's face now, raw and undeniable. His usual smug expression was gone. This wasn't the man I'd once known. This was a broken version of him. A shadow of the person who had promised me a future. A lifetime. But there was no future left. Do you understand what you've done to me? I asked, quieter now. Do you even realize the hurt you've caused? The lies you told me while I was planning a future with you? The trust you shattered when you thought I wouldn't find out? His eyes flicked to the ground, his hands shaking, by his sides. He wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but he knew that nothing he said would undo the damage. No words could erase what had been done. The guests, still unsure of how to react, were starting to murmur amongst themselves. Some were slowly starting to leave, likely to avoid getting caught in the fallout. I didn't care. I didn't need their validation. I looked at Chloe, the woman who had once been my closest friend. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. There was no remorse in her eyes, no apology, only a coldness that made the whole situation even worse. I didn't want to hurt you, Chloe, I said, my voice low and steady. But this wasn't just between me and him. You were part of this too. And now, you both get to live with that. Chloe didn't respond. She couldn't. Her silence said everything I needed to hear. I'm done, I said, turning away. From them both. This wedding is officially canceled. And so is this relationship. I walked toward the exit, the sound of my heels echoing through the emptying room. I could hear whispers behind me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't sure what would happen next. Maybe Daniel would try to fix it, try to get me back. Maybe Chloe would go off with him, trying to build something that would never be as perfect as they thought. But none of that mattered anymore. I had finally done it. I had taken the power back. And that was all I needed. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, the weight I had been carrying for so long lifted. I could breathe again. I could finally live again. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't thought possible. The future was wide open. The past was over. I sat in my car, the engine purring quietly, but I didn't move. I was stuck in a moment, almost in disbelief. The events of the evening played out in my mind like a movie on repeat. There were so many emotions, so many feelings jumbled together that I didn't know where to start. But there was something strangely liberating about the way things had ended. I hadn't expected it to feel like this. The calmness settled in as I gripped the steering wheel. I could hear the hum of traffic around me, the normalcy of the world continuing to move as though nothing had changed. But I had changed. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind inside. My phone buzzed. I picked it up hesitantly, unsure if it would be one of them, Daniel or Chloe, trying to explain themselves. The number on the screen wasn't familiar, but it was a local number. I pressed answer, holding the phone to my ear. Hello? There was a long pause on the other end before a familiar voice came through. It was my mother. Are you okay? She asked, her tone soft and understanding. Yeah, I replied, my voice wavering slightly despite my best efforts to sound calm. I'm okay. I saw the video. Your father told me what happened. Are you at least safe? I'm fine, Mom, I said quickly, blinking away the sting of tears that threatened to rise again. I just needed to get away. My mother sighed, and I could tell she was trying to keep her emotions in check. She wasn't angry, she was hurt, but it wasn't the kind of hurt that made her lash out. It was a quieter kind, the kind that made her ache for me, for the person I used to be before all this. I don't want you to think that we're judging you, darling, she said softly. I know this was hard. You didn't deserve any of this. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. I don't know what to do now, Mom. I thought I had everything figured out. I thought he was the one. I thought I had built this perfect life for myself. And it doesn't feel so perfect now, does it? She said, her voice gentle but firm. What he did wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve to be treated like that. But what you're doing now, that's your strength, darling. You didn't stay in that toxic relationship. You got out. I know, I said quietly. It's just hard. It's all hard. She was silent for a moment before speaking again. You've always been strong, even when you didn't realize it. Don't let this break you. You are not what they did to you. You are so much more than that. I could feel the weight of her words settling in, comforting me in a way I hadn't expected. She was right. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I don't want to go back, I whispered. I don't want to fix it. I don't want him back. I know, my mother said softly, and you don't have to. Take your time. We're all here for you. I sat in silence for a few moments, the sound of the city outside drifting into the car, but it didn't bother me. I was quiet, but this time it wasn't out of sadness or confusion. It was a different kind of quiet, a peaceful one. I'll be home soon, Mom, I said, finally feeling ready to move again. "We'll be waiting. Take care of yourself." The call ended, and I stared out at the street in front of me. The weight in my chest had lifted, and though the night was far, from over, I could feel a sense of finality to everything that had happened. I didn't need anyone else to validate me or explain my choices. I didn't need to hold on to any more anger or disappointment. I was ready to heal. I was ready to rebuild. And I wasn't going to do it with him. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a sense of direction, like I could actually take charge of my life again. The future was wide open. I finally started the engine and pulled away from the curb. It was time to leave that part of my life behind. I had my whole life ahead of me, and nothing at all was going to stop me from living it the way I wanted. It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can feel like everything's falling apart, and the next, you start to see the pieces falling into place. I thought I'd be drowning in the aftermath of that night, suffocating in the guilt of what I'd done, or worse, the guilt of what I hadn't done sooner. But instead, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. It's almost as though all those years of pretending that everything was fine, of trying to fit myself into someone else's idea of love, had been building up inside me. Like I was holding my breath, waiting to exhale, to be free. I woke up the next morning and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me didn't look like the same person who'd stood at the altar the night before, facing an audience of confused and hurt family and friends. She wasn't the woman who'd silently let someone walk all over her for years. No, the woman in that mirror was someone new, stronger, more aware, maybe a little bruised, but she wasn't broken. I decided to take the day for myself. No more distractions. No phone calls from anyone wanting explanations or apologies. Just me. For the first time in ages, I wasn't living for someone else's expectations. I went for a walk in the park, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. It was the middle of the afternoon, and the sun was warm on my skin. I walked without a destination, just letting my feet carry me wherever they wanted to go. I watched families, couples, and joggers pass by, all of them so deeply involved in their own lives, their own stories. It struck me how everyone was just living, moving forward, whether they had problems or not. I wasn't the only one carrying baggage. I wasn't the only one who'd been hurt. Everyone had their own personal demons, their own struggles. But what mattered, I realized, was how you dealt with it. It wasn't the hurt that defined you. It was the way you rose above it. After a while, I found myself sitting on a bench by a small pond, staring at the ducks gliding across the water. The peacefulness of it all seemed so simple, yet so powerful. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the world seep in. That's when I heard it. A familiar voice. "Hey." I opened my eyes and looked up. It was Claire. My best friend. The one person who had stood by me through everything. I hadn't heard from her since the wedding. The last thing I remembered was seeing her face in the crowd, her eyes wide with shock, but also something else. Pride, or maybe relief. "Hey," I replied, smiling a little. She sat down beside me, her eyes flicking over to the ducks, then back to me. There was an awkwardness in the air, but also something comforting about her presence. We didn't need to say much to understand each other. "I'm proud of you," Claire said, her voice steady. "I know it wasn't easy, but you're going to be okay." I let out a soft breath, staring out at the water. I don't know if I'll ever be fully okay, but I think I'm getting there. Slowly. I'm just trying to figure it all out. You know? She nodded. "I get it, but you're doing the right thing. It takes guts, doing what you did. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You showed everyone that you're not going to let anyone control your life. Not anymore." I smiled, feeling the weight of her words sink in. It was the validation I needed, the reassurance that I wasn't alone in this, that what I had done wasn't just some spontaneous act of revenge, it was a declaration of independence. "I'm scared, Claire," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what's next. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something, but I don't know if I'm ready to jump. Her eyes softened and she placed a hand on mine. You don't have to jump yet. You can take it slow. But the important thing is that you're finally standing on your own. You're not waiting for someone else to tell you what to do. You're choosing for yourself, and that's all that matters. I looked down at our hands, both of us holding on to the moment in silence. It wasn't easy, but I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever again. I'm going to take my time, I said, more to myself than to her. I'm going to figure out who I really am, outside of him, outside of all the mess. Claire smiled. That's the spirit, and I'm here for you. Always. We sat there for a while, watching the world go by. The air felt lighter. The weight in my chest wasn't as heavy anymore. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew now I didn't have to walk it alone. It's strange how time seems to stretch out when you're faced with a big decision. Or perhaps, in my case, when you're left to pick up the shattered pieces of what used to be your life. But the weirdest part of it all? I'm not angry. Not like I thought I would be. You'd think I'd feel betrayal, rage, maybe even the urge to burn everything down and shout at the world. But the truth is, I feel something else. A quiet sort of peace. The kind that settles in once you realize that the worst is behind you. That there's nothing left but to move forward. I'm sitting on the same bench at the park again, my second visit here since everything went down. It's funny how familiar places take on a new meaning after a life-altering event. What used to be a simple space in my daily routine now feels like a sanctuary, a place where I can breathe freely, where the weight of the past doesn't cling to me. The weather's changed. It's cooler now, and there's a crispness in the air. Autumn's here. The leaves are turning shades of gold, orange, and red. It feels like the world is giving me a signal that things are changing, that it's okay for me to change too. I've spent the past couple of days reflecting, piecing together all the events that led me here. I keep coming back to that moment at the wedding, the sound of my voice over the microphone, calling out the truth. It's a memory that replays in my mind, but this time, I see it from a different perspective. I used to think I was doing it for the people in the room, for the family that expected me to get married, for the friends who thought I had it all together, and for him, who had no idea what was coming. But now, as I sit here, I realize that it wasn't for them at all. It wasn't about punishing him or making anyone else feel uncomfortable. It was about me. That night, I took back my power. I took back the control I'd lost over the years, wrapped up in the lies, the expectations, and the image of a perfect life. I'd been playing a role, pretending to be someone I wasn't, just to please others. But when I stood there, watching his face fall as the confession video played, I knew it was the last time I'd ever allow myself to be that person again. The silence after the video ended was deafening. The gasps from the crowd, the awkward coughs, the whispers that followed, all of it felt like a strange, distant dream. But the look in his eyes, the humiliation, the way his mouth trembled as he realized he was caught. I can't lie, part of me relished it. And then, just as quickly, I remembered who I was. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't some damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. I wasn't the girl who had been too afraid to speak up all these years. No, I was the woman who stood tall, who spoke the truth no one wanted to hear. And in that moment, I saw myself clearly for the first time. I wasn't the woman I'd been. I wasn't going to let anyone define me anymore. I hadn't expected things to be this quiet in the aftermath. I thought there'd be chaos, apologies, anger, even regret. But there was nothing. Just a strange calm that settled into my chest. I'm not sure what that says about me, about him, about the whole situation. Maybe it says that sometimes silence is the loudest statement you can make. A small group of family members reached out to me the next day, not to comfort me, but to express their disappointment. Their disappointment in how I handled things, how I'd humiliated my fiancé, how I'd disrupted the wedding, as if that was the point, as if they were more concerned with the drama I'd caused than the years of emotional neglect and manipulation I had endured. I don't think I'll ever understand that mindset. Why would I care about saving face when I've just reclaimed my life? Why would I apologize for revealing the truth? I'm done apologizing for things I didn't do wrong. That's what I finally understood. What I've been learning all this time. It's not just about moving on. It's about letting go of the guilt. The guilt that others have tried to force upon me. The guilt that kept me in relationships I knew were unhealthy. The guilt that made me question myself, second guess my choices, and shrink back when I should have stood firm. I don't need anyone's approval anymore. Not his. Not my family's. Not anyone's. I'm free. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of what comes next. There's something oddly comforting about the silence that follows a storm. The days after the wedding, after the chaos, have been unnervingly still. Maybe it's the calm before another whirlwind, but I'd like to think it's something else. Maybe it's peace. It's strange, though. People expect you to crumble after something like that. They think you'll feel regret or sorrow, but I don't. Not anymore. I've spent a lot of time walking these days. Familiar streets, new paths, wherever I can just clear my head. It's one of those simple pleasures I didn't realize I had been missing. Walking gives me a space to think, to breathe, to figure out what happens next. The phone calls have slowed down, the ones from friends, family, even distant acquaintances. People wanted to know the details, wanted to ask why I did what I did. Some tried to be sympathetic. Others tried to convince me it wasn't the right way to handle it. They wanted me to apologize. They wanted me to explain. But I don't owe them an explanation. I don't owe anyone an apology. What I did wasn't a rash decision. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing, a fit of rage. I'd been holding on to that truth for years. Years of feeling unimportant, unnoticed, and unwanted. Years of pretending everything was fine when, in reality, my world was crumbling around me. He wasn't the first man to fail me, but he was the one who made me realize that I deserved more. So, no, I don't regret it. But that doesn't mean it's been easy. I won't pretend that everything's just fallen into place. There are moments when I wake up and the weight of everything hits me again. The idea that I was with someone who could betray me like that, and the thought that the life I'd been planning is now nothing but ashes. There are days when the reality of it all makes me want to shut down, to retreat. But then I remind myself of what I've already survived. And that's what's been helping me move forward. Remembering that I'm stronger than I realized. That this isn't the end. It's the beginning. A beginning I've been too afraid to face until now. But I'm not alone. I have friends, real friends, who are standing by me. People who weren't interested in the drama, who didn't need the details to know that I was making the right choice. They're the ones I turn to when I need comfort, when I need to hear that I'm not crazy for doing what I did. They remind me that it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. I don't know where I'll go from here. The future is a little blurry, and I'm okay with that. It's the uncertainty that's freeing, not the certainty that once bound me. I'll take it day by day, moment by moment, and I'll learn to trust again. Not just in others, but in myself. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I have control over my own story. And I won't let anyone take that from me again. I suppose there's a certain kind of satisfaction that comes from watching someone you once trusted, someone you once loved, face the consequences of their actions. It's like that final chapter in a book where all the questions are answered and the narrative ties up in a neat little bow. Or so I thought. But the truth is, the aftermath isn't as clear-cut as I imagined. It's messier, more complicated, and yet oddly freeing. There's no script for how to move on from something like this, no instruction manual, there's no one-size-fits-all remedy, no get-over-it magic pill. It's a process, a long one. And honestly, I think I'm only just starting to understand the depth of it. When I finally saw him, saw them both. After the wedding, the anger was still there, sharp and cold. But it was different now. There was no more burning desire, For revenge. No need to lash out. All I felt was an overwhelming sense of clarity. A weird sort of peace, even. The texts stopped. The calls stopped. It was like they both vanished into thin air. But I wasn't naive enough to believe it was over. I could feel the tension in the air, feel the judgment from the people around me. They weren't judging me, though. They were judging him, and they didn't even need to say a word. I heard about him a few times, through mutual friends, through whispers and gossip. They said he was sorry. They said he was trying to rebuild himself. I don't know if I believe it. People are always sorry when it's too late. But I didn't need to hear that. I didn't need to know what he was doing, how he was coping with his own guilt. Because that wasn't my concern anymore. What mattered was me. What mattered was how I was going to heal from the wreckage. I've been through a lot in my life, more than I ever thought I would have to. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that healing isn't a straight line. It's a winding path full of detours and setbacks. Some days, I wake up feeling stronger than I ever have, ready to take on the world. Other days, I feel like I'm right back at square one, grappling with the aftermath of what happened. But then, there's the good days. The days when I smile because I realize that I'm free. Free from the lies. Free from the weight of being second best. Free from the pressure to be something I wasn't. And that freedom, however messy and complicated, feels like the first real step in reclaiming who I am. Not the woman I was before all of this, but the woman I'm becoming. Stronger. Wiser. Unapologetically myself. It's a strange thing, learning to forgive. I'm not sure I'll ever truly forgive him. I'm not sure I need to. But I've forgiven myself. And that's enough for now. The silence after everything calms down is almost deafening. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. The whirlwind of emotions had settled into an uncomfortable stillness. It was as if the chaos had left a void, and I was now left to fill it. What does a person do when they've just turned their life upside down? When everything they thought was solid crumbles beneath them? I was angry. Still am, in a way. Angry at him for betraying me. Angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. Angry at the people who let it happen. But anger doesn't do much. It's like holding onto a rock while you're drowning. It just weighs you down, holds you under. And I knew that if I didn't let go, I'd sink further into it. It wasn't easy. Letting go never is. But the first step in the process, the real process of moving on, was accepting what happened. The past is what it is. It can't be changed. No amount of anger, regret, or wishing can undo it. What happened, happened. It's an ugly truth to come to terms with, but it's the truth nonetheless. For the first time in a long time, I stopped obsessing over what they were doing, what they were feeling, what they were thinking. It wasn't my problem anymore. I had bigger things to think about. I had myself to think about. It's funny how life works. You think you have everything planned out, all neatly laid out in front of you. You think you know where you're going. But the universe has a way of throwing curveballs, of throwing you off course. And when you realize you've been off course, all along it's a shock. But there's freedom in that too. In realizing that I'm no longer stuck in a story that wasn't mine. That I can finally write my own chapter. It's both terrifying and liberating. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what I want now, not what anyone else wants for me, not what I thought I should want, but what I truly want. And it's okay if I don't have the answers yet. It's okay if I'm not sure what's next. Not every step has to be taken in a straight line. Not everything has to be figured out immediately. What matters is that I'm moving forward. That's the only direction I can go. There's a world out there, and it's mine for the taking. I might not know all the answers, but I know one thing. I'm done waiting for someone else to decide my worth. I'm done putting my life on hold for people who don't deserve it. And I'm not afraid to take that next step, whatever it may be. The morning after the wedding, the day the world should have been filled with celebration and promises, feels like a quiet rebellion against everything that came before it. The house is silent, a stark contrast to the chaos of last night. I sit in the same spot I've sat for so many mornings before. But everything feels different now. It's not just about the broken engagement, the lies, the betrayal. Though, don't get me wrong, those things still sting. It's more about realizing how much of my life I've spent living for others, for their expectations, their demands, their vision of who I should be. Last night, I gave that up. I let go of the old version of me, the one that sat quietly in the background, the one that second-guessed herself at every turn. I'm not her, anymore. She's gone. The air outside is crisp, almost too sharp for my taste, but it feels like a symbol of everything that's about to change. The world feels new, unmarked, unblemished. For the first time, I realize I can breathe without the weight of 1,000 expectations pressing down on my chest. I think about my future. I think about the woman I want to become. For so long, I had defined myself by the people around me. My fiancé, my family, even my friends. I let them shape who I was, let their opinions dictate my choices. But now, it's different. I have to stop letting others define me. I'm the only one who gets to decide who I am, what I want, and where I'm going. The idea of starting over is both exciting and terrifying. There's something exhilarating about stepping into a new life. Yet it's still a leap into the unknown. There's no blueprint for this kind of thing, no roadmap for rebuilding a life that was shattered in an instant. But maybe that's the point. Maybe life isn't about following a straight path after all. The silence in the house is broken only by the occasional chirp of birds outside. For a moment, I close my eyes, letting the sounds of nature wash over me. It's calming, grounding. It reminds me that the world is still turning, that life doesn't stop just because mine has been disrupted. But even though I'm standing still for now, I know the first step is the hardest. It's easy to stay in the same place, to keep doing what's familiar, even if it's wrong for you. What's difficult, what takes real courage, is stepping away from the comfort of the known and walking into the unknown. I'm ready for that. I might not have all the answers, and I might not know where I'm headed next, but I know I'm not going to spend another minute looking backward. No more regrets, no more self-doubt. Just forward. As I stand up and stretch, feeling the weight of yesterday's decisions settle into my bones, I smile to myself. I'm going to be okay. More than okay, actually. I'm going to thrive. The phone rings, a sharp sound that cuts through the peaceful silence I've been clinging to. I almost don't answer, but something inside me knows that I need to. It's time to face the people I've avoided, the ones who once held so much of my life in their hands. It's him. It's Matthew. His voice on the other end is hesitant, almost pleading. "We need to talk," he says, and I can already hear the guilt in his tone. It's the same guilt he wore when he lied to me, when he betrayed me, when he thought he could keep secrets from me. I take a deep breath, the calmness inside me now a firm wall. "You had your chance to talk," I reply, the words surprisingly steady. "And I'm done listening to your excuses." There's a long silence on the other end. I know he's waiting for me to break, waiting for me to go back to being the woman I was, the one who always forgave, always accepted less than she deserved. But that woman is gone. She's buried beneath the ashes of a broken engagement and a shattered heart. "I've thought about this a lot," he continues, his voice cracking, slightly. "I made a mistake, a huge one, and I want to make it right. Please, can we at least talk about it?" I shake my head, even though he can't see me. I can hear the desperation in his voice, and for a split second, I feel the old pull, the urge to let him back in, to give him another chance. But then I remember everything he took from me, everything he left behind in the wake of his affair, his lies, his betrayals. And I remember that I am enough. I don't need him to validate me. I don't need his approval. What I need is to move on. "I don't need you to make it right," I say quietly, the finality of the words settling into the air between us. "I've already moved on, and I'm not going to waste any more time on someone who doesn't know how to love me properly." His silence speaks volumes, and I know that he's realizing, probably for the first time, that I'm not the same person I was when I put on that white dress and promised forever But forever is not a guarantee. It's just a word we use to make ourselves feel better about the uncertainty of life. And for me, forever is about the future. My future, not his. The call ends with a soft click, but I don't feel relief. I feel peace. I sit back, running my fingers through my hair, letting out a slow breath. The weight is still there, but it's different now. It's not the weight of regret or doubt. It's the weight of knowing that I've done the right thing. And as I look out the window, the sun finally breaking through the clouds, I realize that this is the first real step toward healing, toward living, toward becoming the person I've always been meant to be. Strong, independent, and unshakably myself. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning.